you are leading our communities throughout Montana out of the darkness, so that we can walk suicide out of the darkness of stigma and silence and into the light of hope and healing. Suicide, as you know, is terribly tough to talk about, but we must talk about it. Today, you're talking the talk and walking the walk. You who walk today make a statement with every step that the days of stigmatizing mental illness are way behind us. You who walk today bring mental illness into the light of conversation, prevention, intervention, and treatment, just like we treat any other physical illness. You, each one of you who walk today, will save lives.
Everyone has value, and everyone is very special in this world, and all of us love one another very much in this community, and it's really such a sad thing to think someone is so downtrodden that they would consider ending their life when they have so much value.
We decided to do a walk like this for our community after another suicide had occurred in our youth population. Our community came together. We had several town hall forums and talked about what we can do to raise awareness to prevent suicide in our community. What we found is that in some of these first initial meetings, people were very hesitant to even say the word suicide or to talk about it. They were worried about, if we say it, will somebody then have that in their mind and actually want to kill themselves. And so what we did is we did our research, and we found that this walk was a very safe and structured way to put on an event to raise awareness and bring suicide from the dark and into the light. We've had tremendous support from both the East Helena and Helena communities and from the school systems.
It's so important for the schools because we've lost way too many kids. Kids that my teaching staff and myself and the other kids have loved and adored so much. And so it reaches right into my soul to think of the kids that we've lost to suicide when we loved them so much and they had so much to offer. We thought they were such great people, and it's just such a shame that we really want to encourage others to just take one more step. Reach out to all of us. Reach out to me, the school superintendent, believe it or not, because all of us love one another out in this community, and we want to help one another. And so we're just encouraging people through this attention to the Out of the Darkness walk to give people hope, that there's hope that someone out there really, really cares about them. And I can promise you that that's the truth.
In researching East Helena and researching the area, I picked up on some very old and recent articles about suicide. And historically, suicide is something that has been printed in the media. And unfortunately, concentrations on numbers rather than looking at the problem. We see articles from the late 1800s that discuss suicide, but nothing in solving the problem, only numbers. And numbers don't do a lot. Talk is what it's about. As a younger kid growing up in East Helena and growing up in the area, suicide was something that was pushed back. It was pushed in the dark. It was something that you didn't discuss at the dinner table. You didn't discuss in the car on the way home from school. And it's something that needs to be talked about. Fortunately, we have people that are pushing education and talking about it. And the American Federation for Suicide Prevention, thank goodness, with organizations like the East Helena Suicide Prevention and Awareness Coalition, are bringing these events to the community and showing that talking about it and bringing it out of the darkness is what really solves the problem.
With the coalition and with the work that I do, a lot of it's focused on evidence-based practices. Really want to make sure that what we're doing is intelligent and that we're getting the most bang for our buck, and that we're giving the community the tools that they need to address suicide. Because really, what it all comes down to for me is connectivity. You know, we as human beings are hardwired to connect with each other, and when we don't do that, we lose something. And so, if there's any way to keep us connected, you know, like with this walk, I mean, this is really ultimately a community event, so people can come together and have this conversation and know that if their friend, their neighbor, their coworker, their child is struggling, they can say, hey, I can see that you're not yourself. What's going on? Let's talk about it. I'm here to help you.
We're all here, and we are highlighting the resources where we can reach out to one another to try to give somebody a hand up to help them through a difficult time. And there are a ton of resources coming together, a ton of people that need to be identified as a resource or a place to turn when we're feeling down and out. It's just like you said, Jeannie, it's amazing to watch the volunteers and the people that are behind this effort today, to watch them just pull together and just highlight all those resources, because there's a ton of resources out there. There's a ton of us that care, and so just reach out to us. We're here.
In our resource fairs, we focused on what we can do, what's out there to help those who have suffered a loss in their life, someone that they love very much who died by suicide, and grief and support for those. We've also focused on what's out there and who can we bring here to the resource fair to provide information and guidance on for those who struggle with suicidal thoughts, and also how we as a community can raise awareness and prevention.
One of the things that we're doing with this walk, and one of the things that we need to do in general, is destigmatizing talking about mental health and suicide, because you shouldn't have to feel bad if you need some help, you know. And medicine, like if you need to take medication, then you do it. It's all about having a good quality of life and being able to navigate the rocky waves of life, because, you know, life is hard, but you have people around you to help you. And you can take medication, and you can do therapy, and it's not a character flaw. If you need those things, it's okay. It's okay. And if anyone tells you that it is a character flaw, they don't know what they're talking about. So, you know, it's all about, like, let's just support each other and just make sure we're okay. And really, you know, one of the big things that I like to focus on is, like, mental health is such a big part of this conversation. Like, yes, suicide is complex, and why someone dies by suicide, it's never one reason, but almost always the root cause is a mental health challenge. 93% of the people who die by suicide had a diagnosable mental health challenge. So why not take care of that? Let's be okay with it.
And nobody wanted to talk about it, and nobody wanted to confront it. Nobody wanted to confront it. And putting those individual stories about mental health and suicide in the newspaper and on social media, I think helps wake people up to the fact that moving forward and bringing it out in the open is gonna help fix it. And when you do talk about this, people accept it more. As they move forward with accepting it, they realize that it's not just an unknown person. It might be a neighbor. It might be a vet. You know, the fact that suicide relates to mental illness so closely brings to light the help that should be put in, brings the mental health issue, suicide issue, to light to discuss, but also identification of mental illness. So when the history, like 10, 20 years ago, not knowing the mental illness existed and could potentially cause these types of problems, we didn't know. We had no idea. So we were pushing, or we were advocating for bigger jails, for putting them behind bars, putting them in homes, when really all we needed to do was help them identify what the problems were, and getting them treatments, getting them assistance with helping them with the problem rather than just hiding the problem.
In February of 2016, my cousin died by suicide. And up until that point, my daughters, who were in high school at that time, they would come home and just be very devastated about a suicide that had occurred up at the high school, and one of their friends or somebody that they knew or did a lot of things with. And so it affects the whole entire family. So if my oldest daughter's coming home and she's upset and very, very upset about a suicide and with a friend, that affects all of us. And I do a lot of coaching and how do we talk about our feelings, and and it's a sad opportunity for our family to have a discussion together about what everybody feels about that. What are we going to do? How are we going to let each other know if we're in crisis? So essentially, I've been having this discussion with my daughter, who's now 13, ever since she was 7. When my cousin died by suicide, that was just very devastating to our family. And at that time, our community was really struggling with how to talk about this topic. It's so sensitive, and there's a stigma associated with it. And what do we do as a community to bring this to light? Myself, I felt, every time one of these devastating, traumatic things would happen, everyone again would rally, and somebody's got to do something, or we got to do something. Well, that someone is me, that someone is you, that someone is those that are on our coalition, on our walk committee. That's what we come together, and we got to do something. And so I initially got asked to chair this walk, and I'm an avid runner, and I put events on before, and so I was asked to do this, and I've just been so thankful and grateful and blown away by the outward support from our businesses and our schools and our community with this complex health issue.
As a survivor and as seeing other survivors, you can't do anything about the loss that you had, but you can do things to make sure that other people don't lose someone as well, and that they're not exposed to suicide, and that they themselves are not at risk. If we can address it as survivors having gone through that experience, we might be able to prevent all of that from happening to someone else. And then the other side of it is there's a lot of power in being able to say, okay, I want to make sure this stops. And it's healing as a survivor to go ahead and be involved in this work. And you'll find that a lot of the people that are involved with our coalition, not all of them, but there are quite a few who have had a loss in their lives. And now they're taking charge and trying to make it a difference.
And although a lot of the subject matter can be for some people can be sad, and that's understood. But on the other hand, there's folks who have suffered through loss, that in their heart they're being helped by this. It may be a sad day, but it may be something they remember in their friends or their families as they walk the good times that they've had with those people.
With days like today, we are making progress, all of us, to solve the scourge of suicide. We're coming together in our community, in our schools, through legislation, other public policy, and system change. So, let's walk today out of the darkness into the light of hope. I wish you much love as we all walk together to stop suicide.